At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today and let us surprise you.
Hey everybody, welcome to Fresh Take from What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Amy. Today I'm talking to Danielle Bayard Jackson. She is a female friendship coach and educator who speaks nationally about the science of women's platonic connections. She's the creator of Friend Forward, which teaches tangible, research-based strategies for women to make friends, rekindle old friendships, navigate conflict, and create connections that have depth and closeness. Danielle is the host of the Friend Forward podcast and the author of the new book, Fighting for Our Friendships, The Science and Art of Conflict and Connection in Women's Relationships. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you for having me. I am so glad to be here.
I love your origin story because it just like, yep, that tracks to me. You started out working in high schools. Is that right? As a teacher and then as a department chair. And if you're working in high schools, you are getting, you're soaking in it. You're getting the daily dose of who said what and who's mad at this one. And then you left to start a PR agency thinking you were leaving that sort of, topic and discussion behind, only to find what?
Only to find that there wasn't much difference between those teenagers and those charismatic, high-achieving women. I think in the background or at the heart of things, we're all trying to figure out, how do I navigate relationships with other women?
And so when you're talking to these high-achieving women in this new place, what were the commonalities? What were the things they were talking about that seemed the same to you?
Trying to figure out if they had made some kind of misstep because suddenly someone who was once a friend is treating them differently. Trying to figure out whether they should reach out to that woman who they really like but secretly fear rejection. I mean, so many of the things around conflict, connection, desire to be accepted and belong don't really change. And it doesn't matter if you're 16 or 46, the details may change, but at the heart of it, those desires stay the same.
It's amazing to me. I reflected on this like, yeah, that's right. The same issues I had in high school are still my issues now. How to feel seen and connected, how to move that, like, she's really nice and I bump into her in the park once in a while. And like, is it totally weird for me to say, do you want to be friends? Like, how do you move? How do you do that? It doesn't get easier as we get older.
Yeah, it's so tricky. You've got ego involved and no one wants to be embarrassed or rejected. But yeah, at every stage of womanhood, I'm saying we're trying to figure out, how do I create new connections? How do I deepen the ones that I have? How do I release something when it doesn't really feel good to me? And how do we reconcile after we have really awkward tension? And it's just a skill that we have to continually develop, but it can feel risky and vulnerable to do those things.
And on top of it all is this guilt that you're focusing on something that seems like it's supposed to come easily.
Yeah, I think that's what makes things a little bit tricky is as an adult, there's almost the shame of like, what am I doing? I should have this figured out. I shouldn't be having another friendship breakup. I shouldn't be trying to make friends. I should have had my people already. So I think if anything, it becomes more challenging because we have these ideas of what friendship ought to be and a pressure to have already figured it out. And I don't know that ever happens when you suddenly arrive and all your friendships are flourishing and it perpetually stays that way throughout the lifetime. So I think even accepting that mindset from the very beginning already kind of eases the tensions that come with this friendship journey.
So what was it that made you decide this is something really worth studying and I'm the one to do it, to really study female friendship?
When I first got into it, I kind of like did a search for friendship books online. And at the time, there weren't many results. And of the few results that came up, most of them were for children. I think that's when I had the aha moment of like, okay, so we expect that a child might be struggling to connect, but as adults, we should have it figured out. And that just wasn't consistent with my personal experiences and with the experience of all the women who I met and talked to every day. And so now I just leverage my background in education to study what the latest research has to say about women's conflict, connection, and cooperation to give us tangible ways to navigate the day-to-day business of being friends.
Have you found some resistance from people when you bring it up, that this is something, again, if we as individuals feel guilty that this isn't coming easily because it's supposed to come easily, is there this sort of larger resistance that this isn't something worth studying because it's silly, it should be easy, so it's therefore silly to think about it?
I'm so glad you asked that, because when I first got into this, I actually was a little embarrassed to tell my friends that I was getting into it, because friendship doesn't often command the same immediate respect as when I said, I'm a teacher, I'm an academic chair, I'm a publicist. I felt proud at parties to say that. And so to kind of go into, I'm a friendship educator, I'm a friendship coach, it was like, girl, is that a real job? Okay. So when I first started, like, it was laughable. And then to get people to buy into the idea of, I'm going to pay money for this person to kind of counsel me or advise me, was laughable. But I actually almost closed down the business. I'm going to be totally transparent with you, in 2020, because it just wasn't happening. And I was like, I'll just focus on the PR stuff. And then a TikTok video went viral and it changed everything. And we were ready. I had the curriculum, I had the credentials, I had the coaching, I had the research ready. And so now, since the pandemic, I think people are more comfortable having public discourse around the complexities of friendship. So now I think people, they buy in, which is great for my bank account, you know?
The pandemic, absolutely. The pandemic was a great equalizer, right? We all realized we need more than we're getting. And then as we came out of it, we talked about that so much on this podcast, being sort of, I don't know, socially deconditioned. How do we get back to this? How do we reconnect with the person we somehow haven't talked to in 2 years now? And is that weird? And are we supposed to let it go? Is that something you hear women come to you with frequently?
I do, 100%. And you know what? For the woman who is maybe listening and everything you just said totally resonates with her, I like to kind of anchor the conversation in this to show us the urgency and importance of this conversation. The longest running study on happiness came out of Harvard. And people have been talking about it recently. They've been tracking people for more than 80 years, looking at everything they've got going on in their lives, their income, their marital status, whether or not they have children. And they have found that the number one thing that determines how healthy you are and how happy you are is the quality of your relationships. So I know there are questions about all these other things, how to be a boss in the boardroom, how to be a good mom, and that's important. But at the end of the day, the thing that's going to determine how long you live, how healthy you are in your body, and how much satisfaction you get from your life is the quality of the relationships that you have. And so, you know, I know there are detailed questions that we have around, how do I get more reciprocity? How do I make new friends? But at the heart of it is that ultimate question is, how do I enjoy relationships that offer value to my life? And that's a big question.
So let's talk about the book a little bit. You say something in the book that it surprised me, and I found it refreshing to think of it this way. You say, yes, actually, female friendships are more complicated than male friendships. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a true thing. Why is that?
You know, I looked up the definition of complicated because we tend to couple that with the phrase female friendship. And it said the intersection of many parts. And I thought, that's what it is. Because according to the research, women integrate their friends into their lives to the degree of a sibling, men to the degree of a cousin. And our friendships are known for being more intimate and deeper, but that also means we have more fallouts, which sounds like it doesn't make sense, but you're simply not having fallouts with people you're not invested in to begin with. So if our relationships are close, I have high expectations of you. According to the research, we have higher expectations of our close relationships than men do. We've been through all these things. You're deeply woven into multiple sectors of my life. Then yeah, I'm perceiving relational violations differently. Yeah, I expect more of you. Yeah, there's a chance that we might fall out. And so because of the closeness, sometimes we are at risk for things to end.
So this book walks us through the different ways our friendships work, then the different ways they can become complicated. And it's full of scripts. First is research, understanding why our friendships are complicated, why that's a good thing, not a bad thing, or it's just a true thing. And then, you know, going through the different ways that you might be dealing with a difficult friend, or you might be being the difficult friend, and how to know if it's you. So we're going to take a quick break. I'm talking to Danielle Bayard Jackson. Her new book is Fighting for Our Friendships, and we're going to dig into what's in the book when we get back. Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH. My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com.
So Danielle, you say that there are 3 different sorts of affinities that bring women together and make us friends, make friendships happen. Walk us through those 3 affinities.
Yeah, over the past 6 years of studying the research on women's connection, how we communicate, all these things, I continue to see these themes emerge. It didn't matter if it was in a different discipline, whether it was like psychology or sociology, the same things kept coming up. And so I blended those things together to make it something that's memorable and easily repeatable to understand. But I call it the 3 affinities of female friendship. And the idea is that there are 3 central things that bring us together. And when we perceive a violation in any one of these 3 areas, it tends to be cause for tension. And those 3 things are secrecy, symmetry, and support. So secrecy is kind of like that feeling of being in a vault together. Women have self-disclosure. I share, you share. We trust each other. There's a sense of exclusivity. That's why we're so close and we have besties. But that vault of secrecy, closeness, and exclusivity accounts for the secrecy portion. And that's what brings us together, right? When a new friend starts to share with you, you share with her. You're like, ooh, okay. But also when you feel like she violated it in some way, there's cause for fallout. Then there's support, because the research tells us the number one thing women look for in their same-sex friendships is emotional support. And finally, symmetry. So feelings of sameness, balance, reciprocity, equality, right? Because I hear women more often than men complain about she's not sharing in the way that I am. She's not doing as much. She's so different from me now. I don't know what to make of that. And so those 3 things tend to account for why we feel so connected and then why we feel disconnected when things kind of fall out of alignment.
This made so much sense to me. So let's talk about the symmetry one, because this is, for me, the example that I thought of was I used to call them my playgroup friends. And we were friends because we all had our first babies at around the same time. And we all were, at least at that moment, staying home with those babies full time, which is overwhelming. We jumped into this new experience together. We were over at each other's houses, somebody's house almost every day. We shared constantly while our babies were crawling around. We were very tight. As soon as our kids became school age and we weren't with them all the time, we started to have our own time back. Some of us went back to work. Some of us started a new job. The symmetry was gone, right? The shared experience was gone. And the friendships immediately started to change. There are 2 women from that group that I'm still friends with 20 plus years later. And there are others that I'm not even like in social media touch with. And I used to spend time kind of feeling bad about that, like wondering why those people didn't like me or why, what happened that we weren't friends anymore. But understanding the symmetry thing as a thing that both brings you together and what can start to bring you apart, it just means it's no bad. It's nobody did anything wrong. It's just the reason for the friendship changed.
100%. And we get to decide in every individual relationship, okay, we're falling out of symmetry. There are differences here. How can we come back together? Or you're starting to adopt new worldviews, or we don't share the same life circumstances, but how can we come back together? We get to determine if we'd like to do that in spite of shifting symmetry, or if we say, you know what, the main thing that brought us together was our symmetry in these circumstances. And now that they're not the same, I'm deriving less pleasure from the friendship. And I don't think that there's enough there that I want to continue to dedicate the time, energy, mental labor to maintaining the friendship, which sounds harsh. It's very practical. I mean, I can't be friends with everybody I like, especially if it's no longer a pleasurable experience being engaged, because the main thing we had in common is we no longer share, so yeah, it can definitely be tricky.
See, Danielle, that's where it gets tricky, because you say in the book that saving these relationships that are drifting away, that have turned into small talk, requires saying something. It feels safer, you say, to let things fade into nothingness. And I was like, yeah, that's true. But saying something sounds hard. So are you saying it's always worth saying something, or that it depends on how much this friendship means to you?
Yeah, it definitely depends. So it can depend on what the grievance is. Is it something that's relatively small? Because I think we've all had friends who they nitpick about every little thing they don't like. So, is it the grievance itself? Is it a big deal? Is this a person whose friendship you want to maintain? Right? Is it something where she's kind of a loose acquaintance anyway? So you really figure, you know what? It's not that big a deal. And it doesn't really feel like it's costing me, like costing my peace or things like that to stay quiet. It's just not that serious. I'm not invested. So we get to kind of determine that, right? But for friends that we enjoy and we want to find a way to work through it, we're going to have to say something. And it's deeply uncomfortable. But the research shows that on the other side of healthy conflict, people report feeling closer to one another. I know I do. And I actually stepped back after listening to that bit of research and I thought, that makes sense, because the women in my life I feel closest to, I feel the most comfortable saying, girl, what did you mean by that comment you said last night? Because I felt some kind of way about it, but help me out. What did you mean? I feel comfortable raising issues in service of the friendship. And for the ones where I don't feel safe, whether because it's me or because it's them, right? They're defensive. They attack. We're not as close.
So you see a lot of sort of friend breakup stuff these days on social media, more than you used to. And there can lead to like a lot of therapy speak. There was one TikTok, I don't know if you saw it, that was somebody like, so I didn't want to be friends with this person anymore. And so like I came with this whole, I'm playing the person in the TikTok, came with this whole script of like, you no longer serve my emotional needs, so I'm setting you free. And I have boundary issues or whatever. It just was like a lot of like therapy speak. And the response was sort of like, whoa, like just don't call me anymore. Like who needs that? So are there cases where it is sometimes better to just let it be and not try to like talk your way out of it?
That's funny. I know exactly the TikTok you're talking about, because I was like, oh God, this is painful. Yeah. I mean, I get it. There's some kind of safety in using that quickly accessible language. Hey, this is not serving me. I don't have the capacity to maintain, yada, yada, yada. But the reason that can feel like so disrespectful and cold is because if you're doing that with somebody who, I was holding your hair back in the bathroom in college, and now I'm talking to you like HR, that's going to feel disrespectful because it's incongruent with the relationship we have cultivated over 20 years. And so it needs to be more feelings language, which feels more vulnerable. Hey, the last thing I want to do is hurt you, but I've been thinking about this and I don't really feel good anymore when we're together, and it's not you. I just think I need to be in spaces where I feel safer to be myself. That feels harder to say, but it's honest. It's something real. And it doesn't feel like it's disrespectful to the relationship. But not every friendship ending needs a formal talk. The case that I make for when we need to have a conversation is when our objectives or expectations are misaligned. So we've all been a part of a friendship fade. I call a little less, you call a little less, and life gets busy and you're like, whatever. And we both do it. I think it happens all the time. But as soon as you decide, I don't think I want to do this anymore, but she still expects that we're going to maintain the status quo, I've got to tell her something. What am I just going to perpetually say I'm busy? I'm not doing that. So at some point, if she still expects we're going to hang out every other weekend, if she still expects we're doing life updates via text multiple times a week, and I don't want to do that, at some point there has to be some kind of conversation to kind of like let her know that. And I'm not saying she won't be mad, sad, disappointed, and misunderstand you, but at least she can respect you being direct.
There's so much that we are like overly cautious for on the way out of a friendship. And I think I tend to be more overly cautious on the way into a friendship, that anticipating that rejection and betrayal, as you say, is one of the things that can keep us stuck and can keep our friendships sort of surface. I think, well, I don't want to end up in a fight. I mean, not that I think about it consciously. It's very subconscious, but like, this probably won't work. They probably won't like me. They probably won't reciprocate. So it's easier to not take that risk. What do you say to somebody who's more cagey on the way in like that?
I say two things to that person. The first is the research shows that we tend to like people who like us. So one great starting point is to make it known. And it doesn't have to be creepy, you don't have to be like, I like you, but what are the ways I can kind of communicate that where the subtext is, oh, she likes me. So maybe we're having a conversation and I say something like, man, it is so nice to talk to another mom who understands XYZ. God, it's so nice the subtext is, I like you. I enjoy talking to you. And again, the research says we like people who like us. So you got to make that work for you. Okay. The second thing I'd say to that person is this sounds a little woo-woo and life coachy. Okay. But you have to start adopting the identity of a connector. It's not just something you do. Like, I'll reach out if it looks safe. I don't know. It needs to be who you are. And then you reaching out, you sending the text, you waving hello, those are extensions of who you are. So maybe they don't say hello back, but you're going to, because that's who you are. And we've got to start taking some more authority in our friendship story instead of, being passive. Because if we do that, one day you're going to look up and you're going to look around at your social network and you're going to be like, how did I get here? Because you passively took whatever came your way instead of pursuing the women who energized you, who made you curious. So at some point, we've got to be a little empowered about showing up.
And you can get overly focused, or at least I can, on reciprocity. Like I texted her twice to say like we should have lunch sometime. And she kind of, like, oh yeah, definitely. But then wasn't specific. So that means she doesn't want to be friends. When I can definitely say that I would do the same thing to somebody because I was busy and it was not intentional. And you know what I'm saying? I can overinterpret the reciprocity in the beginning of a relationship. Like over 5 years, you want it to be roughly equal who reaches out to who. But when in the beginning, you do it to let it be unequal and feel a little risky.
You do. You really do. And again, that is vulnerable. And, the best way I've heard vulnerability defined is taking a risk of rejection. So there's a chance that she's busy, that she doesn't text back, that she's just being polite, which I hear a lot of women say, like, what if she's just being nice? She doesn't mean it, but like, that's all a risk. But I would encourage a person to ask, how much are you pre-scripting? Like, well, I'm not going to reach out because I know she's busy. I'm not going to reach out because I know she's pretending. At some point, I have to take you at your word, which, ladies, let's just commit to being honest. Okay. I have to take you at your word. If you say, I'd love to get together sometime, I'm going to be specific. Hey, there's this sangria bar that opened up down the street. I was going to go Saturday around 7 for like an hour or so. Would you want to come with? I'm being specific. I already did the mental labor. Okay. Do you want to come or not? And that kind of helps reduce the mental labor of like, okay, well, whose role is it to suggest a time or date? There's a chance she's busy, but we're looking for the people who say, oh, gosh darn it, I can't make it. But what about Tuesday? I'm looking for people who will negotiate with me. If somebody consistently is like, oh, I can't, sorry, that's okay. And I'm not going to vilify her and be like, oh man, she's shady. She thinks she's so, I'm not going to vilify her. I'm also not going to internalize it. What's wrong with me that she won't share my company? What's wrong with me? She won't say yes. I'm not vilifying. I'm not internalizing. But hey, maybe it's not compatible. Maybe it's not a compatible thing in terms of timing. She just doesn't have the time right now. Or maybe she's not into me, which, her loss, but not into me.
Right.
But yeah, we'd have to put ourselves out there and accept that rejection's a part of the journey instead of becoming so immobilized by the possibility of rejection. Like, it happens. And the final thing I'll say is, I like to joke that I'd like to think I'm a relatively charismatic, interesting woman who's a great conversationalist. And there are still women who are like, I'm not feeling her. And I have to be like, okay, that stings, but I got to move on. And I'm curious about people's ability to bounce back after rejection. Like that's where it's at.
I'm talking to Danielle Bayard Jackson. Her new book is Fighting for Our Friendships, and we'll be right back.
Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack.
All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that, taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE. Danielle, in the book, you go through these 9 common conflicts, some of which we might have covered already, but they're these friend types that can be challenging. And sometimes it's you that's the challenging friend type. So I thought we'd go through a couple of those. Tell us about the friend who doesn't respond. Flaky.
Yeah, it's really hard to have the flaky friend because commitment and trust are really important. We'd all agree, right? But commitment and trust is threatened for the friend who you can't count on. She doesn't text back. She cancels last minute. She says, oh yeah, I'll send you that thing. But she doesn't. She says, I'll be at the party, but she's not. And, the whole point of the book is we try to help you empathize with her instead of cast her off. So we walk through, here are some reasons she might be showing up that way to draw some compassion from you. And then we provide some strategies on, and here's how you can, bring her back. Here's how you can mediate that. And then signs that maybe it's time to let go. And signs that you're the flaky friend. So if you have a flaky friend who's non-committal, she can't show up, it's okay to not accuse, but to invite, to say, hey, I know the last couple times we were trying to get together, you said you wanted to go, and then at the last minute you weren't able to. Do we need to change the place and time? Do we need to change from mornings to nights? What can we do so that we can follow through with the plan? Because I'm always looking forward to seeing you, right? That's my nice way of being, girl, if you said 8 o'clock, okay.
Right. This is one that can totally rear its head when you have one friend who has kids and the other friend who doesn't, and your friendship predates kids. I know that I had a kid with some health challenges, and I definitely became the flaky friend to my, friend from way back. And then all of a sudden, like 50% of the time I was last minute, like tonight's not good now. And I became the flaky friend. And it did affect our friendship for a while. We've been friends for decades. So, we rode that out. But that's the perfect example, I'm thinking, of a time when I could have chosen to have the slightly uncomfortable conversation and say, like, I know I seem flaky right now. it's hitting the fan in my house. Give me 2 years. I promise I'll be back and I'll be able to reciprocate more than I am now. And instead, just sort of like let that sort of ride for a little while. You know what I'm saying? And I think it felt less risky. But in the end, for the friendship, it was probably more risky to not address, yes, I am being flaky, and I can tell you why.
Yeah, I'm so glad you gave that example. That's so real. I remember when I was pregnant, it was kind of tough toward the end, and I committed and then I didn't because my feet hurt. So I know in that season, they may have experienced me as a flaky friend. But to your point, a lot of times people are so hurt by that because they question whether or not you care. They question if you're invested. So if I know that at the heart of it, that's why you're hurt by my flakiness, what can I do to front load the conversation to assure you that that's not it? So I might say, hey, I'm having health issues with the kid. I'm physically unwell. I really don't know when I can commit. And I know it must disappoint you when I back out, but I need you to know things are wild over here, but I cannot wait until things are done so I can see you again. And I cannot wait until we catch our rhythm again. A lot of times that's really all people need.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems so clear to me in retrospect that is the better friend, less risky thing to do than to just let it ride and not say something. Let's talk about the controlling friend.
Yes. This one convicted me because as we were writing, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm controlling in my marriage. I was like, oh, but he doesn't count, But yeah, the controlling friend. So this is one that, she responds negatively when you don't take her advice, when you don't do what she wants to do. She's not happy unless we're doing what she wants to do. And the reason this is so problematic is because even when we're in these healthy, interdependent relationships, the health of our friendship also means that we can still maintain some sense of autonomy. And I can bring my full self here. And if we are only okay as a unit, if you are happy, it makes no room for me and my preferences, my needs, and my desires. And that's why the controlling friend is so problematic. But again, we acknowledge a couple things. We acknowledge that she might be dealing with anxiety, which 1 in 4 women are. And that can manifest itself as, I need us to go to this restaurant and I need it to be done this way. And we can have compassion for that. We can also tell her, hey, sometimes I notice that when I don't kind of go along with some of your ideas, it feels like you're really, really upset. And it makes me start to wonder if, I'm going to upset you if I say my own opinion. And I'm trying to find a way to manage both because I want you to be happy. But I also want to kind of share some of my ideas. What can we do there? Right? It's my nice way of saying like, girl, tangibly, when I lift my voice, you get upset if it differs from your opinion. And that makes me feel like it's not okay for me to bring my ideas here. But that's not the case, I'm sure. Is it? And so helping people see the impact of their behavior sometimes motivates them to change. And if they don't, again, you'd have to look at that. Do I want to be in a friendship where my voice doesn't matter?
It's interesting at the end of that sort of role play, you sort of gave them the out, right? You said like, it feels like this is happening, but I'm sure that's not what's happening, is it? Because I'm sitting here thinking like the controlling friend is not going to respond well to this. She's going to start yelling. But
that's so true.
But you in that script sort of gave the other person the like, show me how I'm misapprehending this. Is that sort of a good practice, a good way to do it?
Totally. Yeah. And many therapists, friends, psychologists I interviewed for the book said the same thing, that expressing the benefit of the doubt is really helpful because I'm kind of giving you an out. Hey, I know you probably didn't mean it, but when you said XYZ last night, I felt really embarrassed. What did you mean by what you said last night? Like, I'm giving you a chance. I'm telling you tangibly what you said. I'm going to assume you weren't trying to attack me. You weren't trying to be shady. So help me understand, what did you mean? And hopefully you get a friend who's like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean it like that. Or you're so right. That was a little, spicy and I shouldn't have said that. And we can move on. But, what we're not going to do is have you say things and then I'm not going to sit and ruminate about it and talk to my other friends about it. And I'm growing resentful. I don't want to do that either.
Danielle, you said before that this book is full of advice about relationships, not just friendships, but marriages as well. Absolutely. I definitely thought that while I was reading this. And so I wanted to be sure to talk about this, about apologizing, thinking about being on the receiving end if you're getting something like this. I'm quoting Danielle here. I circled this in the book. Being defensive delays the process. It delays the process of repair when it comes to apologizing. What should we do instead of being defensive?
Okay, so this sounds like super simplistic, but the very first thing is if a person comes to you and they demand an apology or they're telling you hurt me, and you feel yourself bucking up, like your chest is puffing up and your brain is working to keep you whole. Your brain doesn't want to hear that you're inadequate, that you're not functioning up to par. So sometimes our brains are helping us, making us be defensive in an attempt to keep ourselves whole. No, I'm okay. Literally, you can take a pause. I mean, quite literally, you can take a minute, take a breath to just hear what this person's saying and give yourself some grace. You don't have to respond right away. I think a lot of us get put in a corner because we think we have to, she said something, I said something. It's totally okay to say, wow, okay, I didn't know that you felt that way. I think I'm going to need a minute because I'm not really sure what to say. It is okay to say, I think I need a minute. I'd rather that than feel like, so it's okay to take that in. And then finally, I would say, if you say that you're committed to growing as a person, how exactly do you think that's happening? Just by journaling every day? I mean, that's nice. But also by getting feedback from people who love you, pointing out ways that you're being harmful and problematic. I need other people in my community to lovingly say, Danielle, you're falling short. Danielle, that was hurtful. Danielle, that's not okay. That's how I grow, is in community. And so I just give a caution to people who have a defensive spirit. It is very hard to be in relationship with people who have no self-awareness and who can't accept feedback.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm taking notes on that one internally.
Me too.
Danielle, you have so many different parts of your work and where our listeners can access you. But tell us first a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah. So Friend Forward started because I was getting DMs on Instagram and I thought, well, it would make sense to just have one place where they can go and get some tips. And so the podcast Friend Forward we've had for about 4 years now. They're 15-minute episodes that are packed with research and tangibles to help equip people with ways they can enjoy healthier friendships with other women while also looking at themselves. And so that's probably one of the most fun things that I get to do. And we develop the shows according to the topics that we have suggested on Instagram and all the things. And it's been a really fun journey.
And then you also have a coaching program that women can participate in.
Yeah. And it was so funny because when I started, people were like paying to help me with my friendships. I always say that, if you overhear somebody talking about how they're going to go work with their friendship coach, I know you're judging them. Okay, I'd be too. I'd be like, girl, what? You have to talk to your friends. I think people would be surprised to learn that about 75% of the people I work with are charismatic, extroverted, high-achieving women who have no problem making friends. The issue is I'm unsatisfied in my friendships. I'm not often working with the awkward wallflower who doesn't know how to string a sentence together while she's on my roster. It's mostly women who are like, man, I have tons of friends, but I feel overextended. I feel like they don't see me. I don't know how to put up boundaries. So that's the issue, is not having those quality relationships. And it's been an honor so far to have women trust me with something so deeply personal.
And now there's the book, Fighting for Our Friendships, The Science and Art of Conflict and Connection in Women's Relationships. What do you hope your reader gets out of this book?
I hope women feel more confident and knowledgeable. We can save these little videos on social media all day, like 3 red flags in a friendship and 2 tips for how to have a fun brunch. And, I don't mean to be reductive, like that's all important. But if you're trying to understand the mechanics of women's friendships, why do we do what we do? Why do we fight like we fight? If you want to be equipped more broadly with an aerial view of how things are working, I believe that will help inform the decisions you make about your personal friendship. So my prayer for women reading it is that they feel confident, they feel equipped, and ultimately they are more satisfied in their relationships with other women.
Danielle Bayard Jackson's new book is called Fighting for Our Friendships, The Science and Art of Conflict and Connection in Women's Relationships. In the show notes, I'm going to link to the book, to the podcast, to Danielle's platform. Danielle, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you so much for having me.